Okay, we're going to call the Bicycle and Pedestrian Committee meeting of Monday, October 14th to order. Kelly, could you do the roll call, please?
Tracy Fluke.
Here.
Jessica Atkinson.
Here.
Dale Schmidt.
Here.
Kim Shanna.
Here.
Sharon Cowell.
Here.
Anybody else? Leroy may get here later, I understand, and Kyle is excused.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, everybody.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. A motion on the agenda. The only recommendation I would have, I know we got a lot of staff here too, but maybe to move 6B up, since I know there is public here. But if people are here for A, then we'll leave it the way it is. Does that sound okay? Who's Brian Rickard and Brian Murphy, you here for A?
Yes.
Okay, is that it, and then you're leaving?
Yeah, that's all I have.
Okay, so maybe we'll just leave it the way it is then, since Brian's here. So then I need a motion to approve the agenda, please.
I'll approve.
I'll second.
Motion by Dale, second by Jessica. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Action on the minutes from our September 9th Bicycle and Pedestrian Committee meeting. Any changes or corrections?
I didn't see anything, so I'm going to motion to approve.
Okay, motion by Dale,
I can second.
second by Jessica. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you very much. Okay, items for discussion and possible action. 6A is considered discuss act on information related to the regulation of motorized bicycles, electric personal assisted devices, ATVs, and other vehicles, including neighborhood electric vehicles, scooters, and etc. 6A, and I think, Joel, were you starting with that one, or?
Yeah, and I apologize. We had a memorandum that was included in a previous meeting packet that was more or less kind of duplicated for this packet, but we had a snafu with the packet creation last week, and apparently the old one, the original conversation, was put in today's packet, so if the memorandum was a little bit shorter, that was not by design. But wanted to just kind of bring this forward again. This committee has reviewed the use of electric bicycles, scooters, and electric personal assistive devices at previous meetings. The committee is ultimately going to formulate a recommendation that will be forwarded to the village board for a potential ordinance update to either permit or not permit the use of those devices in the village, more particularly related to its usage on sidewalks and trails. So under statutory law, there are provisions in place that allow for bicycles to be used on roadways just as any other bicycle would. And so that's not really the question. It's more of a question of whether or not the local municipality will allow those types of devices on sidewalks or trails. At present, bicycles are permitted on sidewalks and trails, as we discussed before. At present, our village code does not permit electric bicycles. In fact, our ordinances don't clearly define an electric bicycle. The ordinances that we had created existed, I think, dating back to 2012 or 13. And the state statutes updated their ordinances or their statutes back in 2017 when the proliferation, if you will, of electric bicycles became a thing. So under statutory law, municipalities can restrict any type of bicycle, whether it be electric or otherwise, on sidewalks and trails, in fact. And so what this committee decided back in January of 24 is that we would view electric bicycles the same as bicycles as it relates to sidewalks and trails. So they can use the sidewalks. If they encounter a pedestrian, they have to slow down, they have to provide an audible signal, and they have to pass the pedestrian safely in order to continue to use that. And so that was the recommendation from this committee. In addition to that, we talked about using them on trails, more specifically electric scooters or electric personal assistive devices. So those are different than like a mobility scooter. So if an ADA type device is different under statutory definition than electric assistive device. And I think the purpose of that is that there's this kind of catch-all definition under an electric assisted device that it's not designed for ADA accessibility purposes, but it's designed for mobility that may not necessarily be considered a scooter. So a scooter has a very strict definition under the statutes. Has 2 wheels, it accommodates a single rider, the device itself weighs less than 100 pounds, and it only can go up to 20 miles per hour. The electric assisted devices could be categorized as anything outside of that. So if you're familiar with one wheels, I don't know if anyone's ever seen one of those, but it's basically a scooter but with one wheel. And you're like, how do you ride that? Well, you balance. There's like a board that surrounds the wheel, and you balance on it, and as you kind of lean forward or lean back, it moves forward or moves back. We have a board member that drives a Segway scooter around the village. That would be considered an electric personal device because I think that weighs over 100 pounds anyway. That's pretty heavy, right, Gary?
Yes.
So that would be not a scooter, although it has 2 wheels. It exceeds a certain mile per hour, and it weighs more than the definition of an electric scooter. So it'd be considered an electric personal assistive device. And so again, those are outside of ADA accessibility scooters. So electric wheelchairs, little rascals, things like that. Those are considered ADA type devices. And so those are permissible under statute. Those would be permissible under code. It's all the other extra stuff that people ride for recreational or maybe mobility purposes. So the question that this committee hasn't really addressed is, what do you want to do with electric scooters or electric assisted devices? Do you want to permit them on sidewalks and trails? Statutes allow municipalities to establish their own code as it relates to sidewalks and trails for those types of devices. Either you allow them or you can disallow them. So that's really kind of the question. Ideally, what we would suggest is that whatever you ultimately determine, we're using the same definitions that statutes use to identify what is an electric bicycle, what is an electric scooter, and then what is an electronic assisted device, so that there's consistency between village code and statute. So with that, that's kind of the gist of it. Again, an electric scooter is a device that cannot exceed 20 miles per hour under statute. You say, well, I've seen scooters that can go 40 miles an hour. They would not be defined as a scooter then. They would be considered an electric assistive device or electronic assisted device.
Really?
Yes. Because it would fall outside of the electric scooter definition. So that's why when you set your code, you can establish rules for bicycles, e-bicycles, electric scooters, and electronic assisted devices. Now, to throw a little curveball into this conversation, I know we've talked about...
Throw another one.
We've already talked about bicycles under the statutes. I think this question, I don't know if it came from Kyle or Dale, but there was a question about like the differentiation between
The different
e-bikes.
types of e-bikes, yeah.
Statutes do break it down into 3 classifications.
Yep.
So again, you can, I'm just throwing this out there if we want to have further conversation on the e-bikes. E-bikes are broken down under 3 classes, so you could theoretically outlaw or disallow certain types of classified e-bikes on trails versus others. But again, I would recommend the committee, if it's going to do that, base it on the statutory definition between the 3 classes versus creating your own definition, if that makes sense.
Well, and I think last time we had discussed that we were gonna leave them the same for all 3, because one, just determining by looking at the bikes is next to impossible to determine what class it is, and being realistic with how that would even be enforced within the village is just kind of crazy. So, and we had said with having the e-bikes, our thought was, again, the goal is ultimately to get people out. So since we allow bikes on a sidewalk, allowing the e-bikes the thought was to still encourage that. So my opinion, which is just mine, but would be to just leave it as is, since we'd already discussed that piece, and I don't see a need to change that from what we discussed in January.
I got a question for public safety. You ready? So, a couple of them actually. Just, has there been any tickets issued to youth or adult for people riding these inappropriately or not in the right spot? That you know of?
Not that I'm aware of.
Any accidents in the village?
With
Yeah.
these devices in particular,
Mm-hmm.
not that I'm aware of. We've had bike and vehicle crashes, but not with regards to these that I'm aware of.
Okay. I'm just trying to set the ground here and figure out what, they're using them. You see them all
They're
over the
everywhere.
place, right? You see them all over the place. And certainly they're not necessarily using them safely because, you know, very few of the kids I see riding scooters or the e-bikes or whatever have helmets on. And they're cruising. So I'm surprised we haven't had any accidents with them. But that being said, that's not going to stop. It's only going to get bigger. Or more usage, I guess, especially with Christmas coming up, right?
So if they're on the road, they follow the same rules as the bicycle.
Yeah, the bicycle should be following the same rules as any other roadway traffic. So
Okay.
stopping for stop signs, they should be proceeding on the right-hand side of the road. They should be using signals when they're making their turns. Generally speaking, the traffic codes, if it's allowed to ride on the roadway, it should be following the standard roadway traffic laws. Whereas if it's on the, operating on a sidewalk, it should be following pedestrian.
The different, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen them going against traffic, that's why I asked the question.
Joel, with the electric personal assisted mobility devices, isn't that typically, I mean, when it was first defined, wasn't it mainly for handicapped assistance, and that's what that encompassed? So now you're saying it also was for, if there's devices that are going over 20 miles per hour would fall into that as well, that category?
Yes, because there's users of those devices that don't have accessibility needs. So what was identified in the statutes is that you may have individuals that still use those devices that don't need to use the devices for accessibility purposes. They're using them for recreational purposes. And so there was a distinction between the need for accessibility versus the need for like recreational or just micro mobility.
Transportation, whatever.
Yeah, right.
So they all fall under that, all right. So it sounds like from past discussion, like Jessica said, that bicycles on sidewalks and trails, e-bikes allowed, again, on sidewalks and trails. Scooters, I think, is the one thing that we really have not dove into that far because they're kind of new and there's lots of issues like Rex just kind of mentioned. I don't know if staff can do some additional research on scooters and see what other communities are doing, or if you have, to keep it maybe consistent in the area. I mean, my understanding, and Brian, you may know more, is that the scooters are supposed to be going in the direction of traffic, also kind of like a bike, and doing it, that's the rules for them, but
Yeah, but if
maybe,
they're operating on the roadway, they should be.
so, I mean, I just don't want us to do something that no one else is doing, because like Jessica said, it's never gonna be enforced, and people aren't gonna understand it anyway.
Yeah, so on the electric scooters element, so we wouldn't necessarily be able to disallow their use on roadways outside of a certain mile
Yep.
per hour, just so we're on the same
Yep,
page or wavelength. So we wouldn't, we're somewhat limited. It's more the sidewalk concern. And if we were to use the statutory definition of an electric scooter, it would be a device that has two wheels, a single rider, weighs no more than 100 pounds, and that cannot reach a maximum speed of greater than 20 miles per hour on a flat, smooth surface. So it's pretty limited, and the reason why I bring that up is if you compare that to, let's say, a bicyclist or an e-bike user, you're permitting them to operate on a sidewalk, but a scooter operator what's the difference? I guess I'm kind of throwing the argument out. What's the difference between a person with an e-bike going 20 miles an hour on the sidewalk versus a scooter going 20 miles on the sidewalk?
I mean,
Right.
I probably would be oversimplifying this, but I tend to do that with some of these things. But to me, it would make sense, because we allow e-bikes on the sidewalks, to also allow the scooters, because also the reality is, from, again, my standpoint, there are more kids using them. And there are areas that, again, they should be, if they're in the road, they need to follow the rules. Ultimately, that's there. But if there is a sidewalk there, as a motorist and as a mom that has kids that have these around there, I'll be honest, I tell my kids if there's a sidewalk, they should go on it, and they should be slowing down if someone's there. They need to be courteous to me if they're following the other rules. that are already in place, it should be more of a non-issue, if that makes sense. As long as we're gonna enforce that piece of it, there shouldn't be an issue with one versus the other, plus then it's kind of the same. Because again, I go to like, well, now are we really gonna determine, all right, this kid's 5 and he's riding out in front of his house with his parents on it, okay, well now they have to go into the road to do it, versus a 13-year-old that's using it to, or a 14-year-old that rides theirs to work at Woodside. Because I can tell you, we have a lot of kids, and I know Dairy Queen and a couple other employers I've talked to, that is actually how a lot of young kids are getting to work now, because they can't drive yet and their parents are still at work, but they need to get to work. So
And
I think,
practice.
and practice, yeah, I mean, I think making it as clean and clear as possible, but then also, I mean, I think I brought this up like a year ago when we first started talking about scooters. My thing is, I don't think there's been any education because none of us knew what to
Yeah.
tell them.
Yeah.
But I think we do need to get into school and we need to start talking about this so the kids can actually know what to do. Because like I said, I'm on this committee and I don't even know what to tell the kids to do.
Right.
So
Yeah. I mean, education, like you said, is a big part of it.
it's huge because
And one of the things that, just to let you know, I know you think sidewalk riding is safer, but it really is not. It's a lot safer for you to be in the road and be in a predictable and a seeable place. The biggest concern or the biggest risk for anybody on the sidewalk, on a scooter, on a bike, going faster, is people turning. They just don't see you. So I know you feel different, but statistically,
Yeah.
that's not right. And maybe there's an age thing. Maybe, you know, when they're 16, they can ride, up to 16, they can ride on the sidewalks. And then from then on, they're in the road, because then they've gone through driver's ed. They know what the traffic laws are for, because Brian just said bicyclists are supposed to follow all the rules of the road. If you're a bicycle and you're on the sidewalk, especially if you're going counterflow, you are not following the rules of the road. You aren't even seeing them, because you're just, you know, you're running stop signs, you're running, because they're not impacting you. You're not where you're going to have the traffic device. So that's my concern about letting everybody ride, especially those scooters, man. And the electric bikes are going fast too. And they're not looking. They're just flying through when they go on the road, they're just not looking. So
My thinking was the same way as Tracy. I was going to ask the same question. Can we gain some experience from somebody, and I don't know who we have contact with, but I'm thinking like, you talk about cities like Madison, they've been dealing with this for a long time. Maybe they don't have the information. It's a whole different environment as well, but they obviously have dealt with people, I'm sure, on paths and on the roadway, and they have a lot of design for roadway for bicyclists and what have you. But I don't think I personally am in a position to make a decision like this, because I don't think I have enough information to make that decision, to make something. We're just advising, right? Somebody else decides on the ordinance, or however we want to change the ordinance. But still, they're relying on us.
Tell us what you're looking for so we can.
Experience from other people. I'm thinking kind of like she is. I'm like,
These are doing.
let's take Packland Avenue, right? And you're on a pathway. And even on a regular bicycle, you can fly. But on a motorized bicycle, you definitely can fly. And so are they going to have control to look out for that pedestrian that's on that path versus if they had to be on the roadway? And then you have intersections. And again, you have to deal with that on a bicycle too, a regular bicycle, I get that.
Yep.
But these speeds are considerably different, and it depends on the person on that bicycle,
Right.
whether it's electric or a regular bicycle.
right, their
But
knowledge.
my thought was somebody may have better experience as to the accidents, to the risk, to all that we haven't,
Right.
we're kind of new and even seeing this happen.
Right.
I'm going to give you an example. So I know somebody that was walking on the left-hand side of the road, walking towards the white line, which I do till traffic comes, because I don't like, when you're old, it makes a difference when you're this much higher with your foot when you're running. And that person on that scooter went by at probably 20 miles an hour in between her and the curb. Now, if she'd have moved, she'd have got hit. But there's the education part. They're on the wrong side of the road.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking the same thing on the path. It's not as simple as say, let's just let them go,
Right.
without understanding how serious could that be by just letting them go. I don't know. That's what I'm saying. I don't have enough experience to make the
Well, and
decision.
I think that's a good idea, reaching out to other communities, other departments, what they're doing, what's working and what's not. Because I agree with the, I don't have that knowledge and expertise to say, well, this is what it should be. I mean, I have a little bit, but not enough to really make a good informed decision. So I think it's more research and then maybe staff coming back with recommendations. And this is what we think, this is what we believe, this is what we found, and go from there and then have this committee react to it. And, you know.
I would be interested in that feedback. I also see the value of, I mean, sort of what Jessica said, because that's just the pragmatics of it. That's actually what people are going to do.
Right.
And then we dig into the concerns that you've raised about safety issues. So I just don't know how it would be enforceable. I worry about that. I worry about the practical aspects of it, and I feel like what we can control is the education aspects of it. That is my opinion.
Well, and I think when they're doing things like you said, scooting between people and a curb, and I mean, Friday night I dropped my son off down by Titletown, and on my way there was probably 12 to 15 kids all on scooters, all in black, no one wearing anything reflective, on their way down to Titletown on the way, and I pointed that out to my son. I was told,
All looked at you like,
I said, do you see how I can't see any of them right now? And he's like, you can easily see the red reflector on the back of that. And I was like, that's because there's 15 of them.
Yeah.
But I was like, this is what you look like when you don't wear what you're supposed to wear in this. So fun fact.
Yeah.
And then I dropped him off with his scooter in the back of mine that I left there because he was riding that back, well, not with those kids, but probably with another group of 10 of them, to a friend's house that they're all staying at. But I think to that point, like, they are all doing it. They don't know, but also no one else stops them and says,
yeah, turn around or do this or
hey.
do
And
that.
I mean, I can tell you when I pulled in to drop him off at Titletown, and again, knowing all this is coming up, the football field there, I mean, there was probably, like, we talked about when, like, Bird Scooter was going to come in, how the concern was with, like, the scooters ever that, and I was kind of laughing to myself because I was just like, there are probably, I don't know, 50 of them just along that football field there. And again, I unloaded my sons and dropped him off there with it because that's what he was taking back to a friend's house. Like, that is just, whether we like it or not,
It's here.
it's here.
Yeah.
But I think it's getting the education out and then also talking to them about being courteous, because no different than if a kid's riding a bike down the road and blows past somebody and is
Absolutely.
kind of being, I hate to say it, a jerk about it.
Yep.
Some of that, they just need to be held accountable
Yep. They need to understand.
for, and they need to understand that,
Yeah.
you know, and I think starting with the schools, the coaches, practices, like you said, go to a football practice, there are tons of them there.
Yeah.
But again, it's the younger kids because they don't drive yet. So by the
Right.
time they're getting to high school, I think it's probably less of an issue. But the middle school, probably freshmen, all of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just think the easier and more simplistic we
Yes.
keep the
Ordinance and the education.
ordinance, all of that, the more realistic it is for us to be able to enforce it. Because instead of them worrying about if they should be on the road or the sidewalk, I'd rather be down their throats about being courteous to the other people they're sharing that space with,
Right.
if that makes sense.
Yes. Yeah.
Natalie, are you a resource for education pieces on that?
Yeah, I was just thinking about what pathways there might be. I'm thinking maybe even Center for Childhood Safety, given that they are going into the classrooms
The bike
currently.
rodeo.
Well, that's what I say.
The bike
The bike rodeos, I feel like, would be a great place for it.
Yeah.
And again, the helmets, I'll be honest, like, that is one thing.
Yeah.
My son always has that on, because otherwise I said,
It's gone.
Mom has eyes everywhere if I find
Yeah.
out you don't have a helmet on in it. Because I'll be honest, I've rode around it. They are zippy.
Yeah.
So like, you hit the curb off that, you're gonna feel it. So
Yes, so certainly, and I'm also thinking, so the discussion is around the ordinance in particular, right? Do we know what Green Bay's ordinance is? Just in terms of just thinking, is there like a way of like mirroring that if we're seeing?
Yeah.
when we looked at it a while ago, Green Bay's was, because Green Bay, they can't ride on the sidewalks, even bicycles.
Yeah.
So Green Bay was observing
So
them,
there
and
are
like with the
ways of-
bird scooters and the lime,
Bikes.
the lime bikes.
Yep.
I don't know if they're lime anymore.
Or
but yeah.
lime something it was,
Yeah.
it was bike lane is, but again, it wasn't called out specifically because
Okay.
everything was so new, but they were defaulting at the time to looking at them
Because
like
I can
a
also
bicycle.
look into that if that's helpful too. I mean, just to see what, like, because you know,
Yeah, especially a
folks
community
aren't
that
seeing
close
the
to
line,
us.
right?
Yeah.
Like
Right,
go
or
from
even like De Pere. if
even
they're-
all the ones
again,
surrounding.
on the trails, they're going back and forth between all, again, here, they're going to Titletown and then they're zipping over into Green Bay.
I'm also
Yeah.
thinking too, if there's, you know, potentially some collaboration with all of the municipalities adjoining, then also the education gets a little easier too, and you
Yeah.
could do a full
System.
education that's
That even makes
consistent
more
across.
sense, because if you're inconsistent
Right.
and they're
Right.
traveling from
Yeah.
one village to city,
And nobody knows when they're
And they
crossing
ain't
the
gonna
village
know.
line. No,
Well,
they
and how
don't
many
know.
kids, to be honest, are school of choice? So if they're doing
Yeah.
it differently in their neighborhood, because again, that's what 35% of our kids are school of choice. So if their rules are different where they live versus where they go to school
Yeah.
here, that's going to make a difference too.
And while I'm curious about that, if they have more stringent sorting of, I mean, I've ridden
Yeah, I
on
agree.
lots of Green Bay sidewalks with my bike, because there's areas where riding on the road just feels like
it's unsafe.
So if that is their rule, I'm among many who are not obeying it, and I have never had an enforcement issue. So I'm not interested in something more complex, except for on an information basis.
Agreed.
Because I don't want to put out anything that's not enforceable and neglect the part we can control, which is educating our kids.
Yeah.
Totally agree.
Yeah, does the staff know? I mean, do you know what the surrounding municipalities are? Just out of curiosity.
Not off the top of my head, no.
Okay.
We would have to do some digging on
Okay.
that, but I think what we wanted to try to accomplish is determine what the value is for this committee and for ultimately the village board. So, yeah, that's great that we understand what the surrounding communities are doing, or maybe even Madison that's more exposed to these types of conditions. At the end of the day, what we have found anyway is that the Ashwaubenon Village Board or the Ashwaubenon community does it the Ashwaubenon way. So whatever that policy is, that kind of vision or values of this community is what is ultimately going to dictate to us what that ordinance will be. So we can certainly look up other examples. I wouldn't necessarily use it to base your decision, because again, it's a value-based decision. What do you value? Do you value the opportunity for people to use sidewalks and trails with these types of devices, or do you not? Under statutory law, they're able to use the road so long as they follow the rules of the road. So there's really kind of three big questions as it relates to this conversation. The e-bikes thing, I think, is pretty straightforward. They're allowed to use the road just as a regular bicyclist can use the road. Can they use sidewalks and trails? Sounds like yes. Scooters, if we use the strict definition of the statutes, only certain types of scooters are allowed on sidewalks or on roads. If they are allowed on sidewalks, you'd have to call that out under your own municipal code, like we currently do with bicycles. And then if you want to allow scooters or electronic mobility or assistive devices, I think it's mobility devices now, I stand corrected. If you want to allow those on the roads, you certainly can under the statutes. You can restrict them, however, to local streets that are posted at 25 miles per hour or less. So meaning if you have a 35 mile an hour posted speed limit on a local road, you could restrict e-scooters and those assistive devices on the road. But 25 miles per hour or less, they are able to use the road as prescribed under statute. So what we would recommend, and we can certainly do this for the next meeting, is we can actually, because we haven't done that yet, we could craft the code for a draft code for you based on those concepts. Because I don't necessarily get the feel or the vibe from this group that you're looking to restrict the ability, because as you add more restrictions, it becomes more and more difficult to enforce, right? So it's going to be a challenge that way.
And
So we can,
educate.
yeah, and educate. So we can certainly put together an example, a draft code changes. It'll actually probably be much simpler than what our current code says, because it'll just reference statute. And it will call out the allowance of being able to use sidewalks and trails. And then we can find some examples. We can poll the surrounding adjacent communities that have connectivity to the village. I suspect that many of them probably don't have anything on their books, because it is still, although it's 5 or 6 years old,
Yep.
people are still just kind of becoming aware of the changes. We could do that. We can certainly pull Madison's code because you're right. I think they're probably going to be more progressive as it relates to these.
Yeah.
That would be
these
the
just-
only safety piece. The other part, I'm with her. I mean, how would you even regulate it, whether they were on the path or not?
Yeah.
You're gonna chase them down the
Yeah.
path and pick them up? And it's safety for them, probably maybe more safe to probably be on that path than,
When I just think of like North Road, because like especially with driveways, I get, being on, or not North Road, I'm sorry, Pilgrim. So there's the sidewalk that runs along there. Like I intentionally tell our kids to go up Pilgrim if they're gonna be going down towards the school or anything versus going all the way up, because there's that sidewalk that runs there, that they're out of the road, but also there is nothing on that sidewalk.
Any crossings?
No crossings, it's a long, clear shot.
Yeah.
So I think it just, the more you add into things, some of this, people are just gonna have to figure out what's the safest route for them.
For them.
But trying to keep it as simple, or even like when you're saying 35 versus 25, I'm like, oh God, even adding that level again. Like,
Yeah.
I just think the more it just
Makes it
gets
harder.
confusing, where again, if we can really hammer down on being courteous to the other people, again, no matter what bike, e-bike, scooter you're on, they should be courteous to people,
Yeah.
pedestrians, other people not going as fast as them, all of that. And then teaching them which side of the road to be on, because again,
Yeah.
bicyclists and pedestrians, we have a hard time with the kids understanding that in general too.
Yeah.
And just really educating on those things, I think we'd be safer in the village, and I think it would be easier for APS to be able to just be like, it's this for everything and follow it.
Well, and I think we have to educate the adults too.
For sure.
Because a lot of adults don't know that either. And maybe, Natalie, if you wouldn't mind seeing if there's any education from even Center for Child Safety that we could include maybe on our next agenda. And then we'll put this back on the agenda to discuss the ordinance, and if staff can, bring a kind of a draft ordinance for us to look at. And Natalie, if you can check some
Yep.
education things, then we can kind of talk about that as well and see where we're at.
Yeah, the only other thing that I thought of was I saw, and I don't know if anywhere is actually doing it, but when I was trying to do a little research in some of this, so you know how like you have to, some places you register like your bike with the village?
Yeah.
So when people are doing that, like having their scooters being registered with their municipality, that then we'd be able to provide them with how they are supposed to utilize them in our
Yeah.
area. So even if you're not gonna charge them for it, or people aren't, but that way at least there's some form of getting that information. So if you have a e-scooter in the village, you have to register it with the village, which would essentially be nothing more than making sure that then we can educate them on. Because again, as a parent, I would love that, to be like, okay, I got my kid this, I have to register at schools,
Yeah.
do that. Okay, this is how your kid's supposed to use it in the village. They can or cannot be on sidewalks, they
Yeah.
should be on the left or the right-hand side.
Yeah.
It just might be, again, another area of opportunity
Yeah,
to
get the word out.
To get the word out and educate
Yeah.
How do you
them.
guys register bicycles now? Right.
You do.
They do name of public safety, and then we have a registration tag
sticker.
in
Yeah.
connection to it.
And
Do
honestly,
you have many do
people-
that, Brian? I'm sorry, Jessica.
No, it's okay.
Do you have any idea?
Off the top of my head, I
Okay.
don't know.
Because I know them being stolen
think
is another
anybody
big
with
thing, so
value
honestly, I think I would see
probably do
more
it.
people being willing to register their scooter, trying to keep it serial numbered or safe, so if it gets stolen, it can be returned type
Yeah.
thing,
Yeah.
as opposed to even a bike, because I know even like at the Taco Bell over by our house on 172, one of the kids pulled up, they literally went in, said they came back out 2 minutes later, scooter gone. So, and I mean, they're not cheap, so,
stinks.
it does.
Yeah.
But, again, maybe there'd be more of an opportunity that people would be
Right.
willing to register it to get a number because
yeah.
they don't want their kid to have it stolen.
Right.
And then that gives us the opportunity to give them education as to how they should use it safely.
Well, and if something happens and the bike is registered or the scooter is registered, and they get, the public safety goes out to a crash, they can find out who that person is
Right.
easier and notify
Yeah.
their parents or whatever. So that's a benefit to it as
Yeah.
well for safety of that child, or, because they might not have ID or whatever
Right.
on them.
That's a great point.
So,
Be interesting to know if there's incentive by an insurance company to register that versus not being registered if it was stolen. I don't even
Yeah.
know what the rules are there.
Yeah.
But you're correct, and that's why I would think somebody registered gives so much more value than, not all bicycles, but a lot of bicycles. To have that incentive to have it registered so that at least they got something.
yeah.
To identify
I'm
it.
just curious, can I ask, is that a real thing, to register your bicycle?
Yeah.
I have lived here my whole
I know.
life, and I have never once even known that was a thing.
Yep.
Mine's sitting over there with the registration on it.
Educate people on that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's, yeah.
Let's start there.
So,
In the bike and ped packet, the information Joel put down, it states what the village ordinance, it
Yeah.
actually says that. That
Says
is
right in
important.
it. Yep.
I just take good notes.
Yeah.
I know.
I'm glad you read it, Rex.
Okay, is
We
there
can,
any,
and we can ask that question for when we do a quick code review from other municipalities. Are you registering, we know
Yeah.
under most municipalities
idea.
register bicycles,
Yeah.
but what are you doing with electronic bicycles, scooters,
Yeah.
things of that
Yeah.
nature? So it's a good question.
that's a
to
good
ask.
idea. Okay, anything else on that, you guys, otherwise we'll bring it back. Is next month gonna be too soon for staff to get that together, or would you like to put it out a little bit more?
I would like to get it
Pardon
done.
me?
I'd like to get it done.
Okay, so we'd like to get it done, so we'll put that on the next agenda in November already, geez. And then education stuff from Natalie would be great.
Okay.
All right, if nothing else on that, we'll move on to 6B. Consider discuss act on a recommendation to install safety improvements for pedestrian crossings along Packerland Drive. We received a request from Barb, ran into her up in Oconto one day. And this was discussed a couple years ago. I think Barb had reached out.
herself, so there's.
Oh, yeah. We can need to open the floor then before. But she had reached out to me about the concern on crossing Packerland and getting over to the trail on the west side. I suggested she send us a letter. This was discussed about 2 years ago, I think, and at that time, our Public Works Director, Doug, did meet with Barb, and I think maybe neighbors or just Barb. And then I think Jay Krieger also sat down with Barb to see where we're at. I don't believe it ever came back to our committee, and I may be wrong on that, but I don't remember a recommendation or site or anything else that came back to us specifically. So told Barb bring it back again, and she did. So that's the request. Hopefully everyone got a copy of her correspondence that she had sent out to request us look into it further.
I seem to remember we talked about West Paulson being a good spot for it, but there's never any action.
Yeah, it's not
More
on our,
specific
we
direction.
never
Right.
got as far as.
Yeah, I don't think it ever came back through the whole,
No,
you know,
it
to
was-
us and the village board or
It
to
was
put it
more
on
discussion
anything or,
just here at the table.
right, and I think that there was some discussion with Doug and maybe,
Yeah, if I
Jay.
West Paulson was talked about, there was some concerns about the curvature in Packerland. And then, if I recall correctly, there was some discussion at committee too about maybe taking a look and I think members were gonna go check it out a little bit too, but, and that was gonna be some of my conversation is looking at the bike and ped plan and connectivity to Packerland from that neighborhood. We had some brief conversations about Carroll Lane being possible better option just because of the straightaway and then its connection to Hanson. And as soon as I have a moment, I'll pull up the bike and ped plan just so you can kind of see that. The point being is if we're going to add a crossing, let's put it in a location that's going to be conducive to future improvements to the entire neighborhood versus just West Paulson. And then let's say Paulson is never really planned to have sidewalks extend into it. Then you're really kind of telling people to walk on the streets through the neighborhood to get to Paulson to cross on Packerland. Whereas if Carroll is the street that's going to eventually, let's say, potentially have sidewalks on it from Hanson over to Packerland, that would, you know, potentially be the better location for that crossing. So I think, if I recall correctly, that was some of the conversation is let's look at that overall plan and that map of that neighborhood, and then let's figure out where all of the improvements would go, so that if we make that improvement on Packerland, it has connectivity to the rest of the neighborhood and the improvements that would be planned for that location.
How far to the west do the sidewalks go on Ponderosa?
I'll pull it up here in a moment. I can
How far
probably
west?
zoom
They
in.
go-
They only go up to Babcock.
Babcock.
So there's no sidewalks between Babcock and Packerland? correct?
Packerland doesn't, Babcock only goes up to,
But on any of the streets?
No.
no.
In between the two?
Babcock is kind of the dividing
Where
line
the
on the west
school is.
side there.
yeah.
Is it appropriate to kind of make a little hook or a zig and a zag and then continue aside with this proposed sidewalk from Babcock to Packerland on Carroll then?
Well, there's sidewalk all the way down in Babcock.
Well, that's what I'm saying. How far west does the sidewalk go on Babcock?
Oh,
How
that's
far west?
north-south.
How far south?
South. No, to the west.
They only,
Babcock.
they end on
It runs north and
Ponderosa. The sidewalks end on Ponderosa on Babcock.
Okay.
Babcock only goes one more block and then it stops.
Correct, but between Babcock and Packerland, are there any sidewalks going east-west?
No.
So would it be appropriate then to continue the sidewalk not on Ponderosa, west of Babcock?
No.
But since you've already got a sidewalk on Babcock that goes to Carroll, then continuing it on Carroll from Carroll to
Yeah.
Packerland? Or from Babcock to Packerland on Carroll? If you eventually want to have a crossing at Carroll.
Yeah, and this was, and that's that conversation that Rex is describing that kind of, I thought, needed some additional conversation, because you have sidewalk and bike lane on Hanson, and then it terminates here. And then there's a gap. We do have sidewalk, as Rex had mentioned, on Ponderosa to Babcock, and then it terminates. Babcock, you have that north-south connection, obviously school and park here. What is that kind of big picture plan? So once we get to Babcock, what is that plan to get pedestrian access to Packerland, wherever that goes? That's where we should plan for that crossing.
You can't continue it on Ponderosa necessarily.
Right.
Because
Yeah.
it doesn't go
cul-de-sac.
through, so
Yeah.
you could use this section right here on Babcock and then just continue it on Carroll if you want to have that crossing at Carroll. In that way, my opinion, that would be the simplest way to do it, but I don't know what you guys think about that.
Maybe we could, before we get too far in discussion, open the floor so that Barb can speak and just tell kind of her concern and talking to her neighbors and stuff. So if someone would want to make a motion to open the floor, that would be great.
I'll make a motion to open the floor.
Jessica, anyone second?
Second.
Second, Sharon. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carried. Barb, I don't know if you want to add anything or the kind of your concerns and why this was brought forward in the first place, so people have a feel for that.
Sure, I did talk to both Doug and Jay, and they both came to my house and we visited. And Doug was saying part of it is that because it was a county road at that time, that they'd have to work with the county and the village in order to do something there.
Can I interrupt real quick? Brian Rickards in the back, do you know if that is still the same? Did you have any feel for that because it's a county road that we have to work with the county on crossing there?
Yes, we will. Yeah, any work that we do around Packerland is a county road. They support anything we do, but they also will not financially fund anything we do, so.
Okay, so they'd have to approve it though as well, you're
Correct.
saying? Okay.
Yep.
Okay, I'm sorry, go ahead. Thank you, Brian.
So, I did just go around the neighborhood, so you know it wasn't just me, because I couldn't talk to anybody else, and joining me to come tonight, so it's like, okay.
Way to stand tall.
So it's like, okay, I'll go. So, and that's just on one of my little walks. And every house I stopped, I was like, oh, yes, we have to do something, because as my husband and I ride our bikes a lot, I have to tell you, I'm a nervous Nelly every time I get up to Packerland, because you do have that very nice bike trail along Packerland, and I'm always apprehensive on crossing that, because people do not go the speed limit. So something needs to be done. I talked to another resident that goes, even if you put in the summertime, like at the corner of Ponderosa and Babcock, and down by school, you know, they have the things in the middle of the road that are only there in the summer, because once they start plowing the roads, they have to take it away.
Yep.
That says by law, you have to stop when there's
Yield.
a pedestrian.
Yield.
Or yield when there's
Yield
a
state, yep.
pedestrian there. So it's like even something like that in a number of places to slow them down, but it's
Wouldn't
like,
work on four lanes.
County wouldn't want
so it's
that.
like, I don't know if that'll work. I think we need something more permanent, because they're just gonna blow past that.
Yeah.
So everyone I've talked to is okay with wherever you put it. They just want something there, because we have to either go up to 172, which makes me nervous going up to there, because I'm not riding my bike, because I live on Ponderosa by school. Okay, so I either have to zigzag around to get down on Skylark, which turns into what? To get across,
Yeah.
and that makes me nervous. So then we usually go down to
Wabi.
to Hidden Valley and go all the way to Wabi, and it's like, I just want to get to the bike path and ride my bike, and even just to walk. And I see a lot of people that do cross at Paulson, because the last time Tom and I were out riding, a lot of people cross at Paulson. And I think kind of because you're by the gas station there, and there is actually a road
Yes,
You know, it's an
attached
actual
to.
intersection, because the problem I see with Carroll
It's just
is that
not-
it goes across to a business.
Yeah,
You're in
That-
high traffic territory there.
Yeah, so that's something, but I also see with Rex talking about, yeah, there's that little jaunt in the road there. But we're just asking please to put something, and I see the blinking lights and how people just stop.
Yeah.
I mean, I use the one when we do ride our bikes and we're brave enough to go across and we cross Cormier. That's wonderful, having pushed that button. And as far as if my kids are still young enough, that would be the corner that they would cross, because that is a safe place for them in which to cross.
Which Cormier?
When you get to Shady and Cormier.
Okay.
no, yeah.
Oh,
And then up by Valley View School, they put in one, and then of
Yeah.
course the one over by Lambeau. And now today I was just on Riverside, in the pier, and they have one there that's not, it's north
Riverside
of
is,
the.
the Hawk signal is actually different than the other ones.
Oh, okay, I
It
just saw
actually
that. It was-
stops traffic in the red light, so they have
Oh.
to stop rather than the RFB,
Is that,
which,
is that a county road?
that at Riverside
You
is
know?
the state, actually state
State
highway.
one.
Oh, that is.
Yeah, 57,
That is
right,
57.
Yeah. Yeah, because they have trouble crossing also to get to Fox River Trail from
Yes.
the east, getting over there, so they put that in a few years ago to see how that would work, so. But that actually stops all traffic, because it's a different type of signal. But,
It's just nice to have a flow, so those of us who want to actually get out and walk and bike
yeah, to be able to get
can
there,
do that.
yeah.
So you had mentioned it's part of the county. So
Mm-hmm.
what's the likelihood of the county working with us on a road like that for a crosswalk? From your experience, or don't you have any experience with that?
I don't think it'd be too much of an issue.
You don't?
There is a new highway commissioner. I mean,
Okay.
I don't foresee it being,
Okay, I just wanted to make sure we didn't have a roadblock right away before we would start, that we have to,
Right.
huge mountain to climb here.
Yeah, it sounds like from Brian that they would be willing, they're just not willing to pay for anything or get involved, maybe, how about design or recommendations, anything with that? Would they get
when it
involved
comes
with?
to pedestrian accommodations, if it's part of a reconstruct project, you know, so say we're fully say they're fully reconstructing Packerland, they will pay for half of it if it's part of one of the reconstructs, but since this is a retrofit, we would be fully responsible for the cost.
Okay,
So one of the things that I'll touch on too is, this is the Paulson Drive intersection here. So Packerland is in the picture, and then this is Paulson on the Ashwaubenon side. If,
Got a helmet on.
you know, that, this is one added benefit, obviously there's a connecting street here, so I think it does alert motorists that there is a potential for crossing as a result of that connecting street. Versus as you go up to Carroll, that's just a driveway, so it makes sense that way. One of the things we would we would need to do, and Brian can confirm this, is we would need to put some type of ped pads on the corners here
You would.
for accessibility, and then mark that crosswalk over to this side. So it may be offset slightly to the intersection to get that straight crossing, right? So let's say the crosswalk would be like, it's not that far back, but back here. What would need to be retrofitted in then is that ped pad on the crossing to connect to the trail would need to be done too. So there'd be a little bit of rework on all four quadrants as well. I don't know what the committee's recommendation is, but if you're walking on Paulson to Packerland, you're gonna be legally, should be across the street, opposing traffic. So you're likely gonna wanna have a crosswalk on both the north and south side of the
the
intersection.
bikers on the,
Yep,
going the other way.
so just FYI on that you'll probably have that.
Pardon?
That's the same thing, there's the same issue that we had
You'd
on
have to put in two.
Broadway where the new trail comes out.
Yeah, because you're gonna,
Station.
if you have pedestrians that are traveling eastbound on Paulson, let's say they cross on the trail, they want to connect back into the neighborhood, and they're crossing onto Paulson, they should be on the north side of Paulson while walking, because they should be opposing traffic. And if you're walking from the neighborhood to the trail, they should be walking on the south side of Paulson, because they should be opposing traffic. So you're gonna want either a crosswalk, two crosswalks on Packerland, or another crosswalk that connects the two ped pads on Paulson on this side, kind of where this arrow is moving back and forth.
Is that
Here.
how Shady and like Santa Barbara are? They have like the side street one, 'cause isn't there only one on those two streets?
There is just
It is
one.
Just
yeah.
one.
Yeah.
Cormier.
Yep.
So I feel like that would be easier to just have on the side street it come,
That's a lot smaller road,
It would be confusing
though.
to have two on Packer land.
and like right back to back. So that would mirror the other two we already have.
So
But
they
those
have-
are one-lane
Yeah, they're
roads
shaded
too.
right here.
They have pet pad. So this would be similar to that.
Yeah.
So you have it where you have this pet pad on each corner with no sidewalk. So you'd really have kind of 4 crosswalks at that intersection.
Okay, so if you want to know from a biker's perspective, which would be, I guess, for me and Tracy most likely. If I was to, okay, and I talked this over with Jay once before, just a couple of weeks ago, Jay and I, because Jay and I are good friends. I would have to take Paulson before I would take Carroll or Comanche. I always cross at Paulson. I never go on Carroll and I never go on Comanche.
Why is that?
Just because I can see better. I know Barb was saying it's a straighter shot from Carroll, but, you know, I mean, I'm there all the time, so I mean, I just go to Paulson. I just go to Paulson because I feel it's a better shot for me to look to the north and a better shot for me to look for the south for traffic.
So your sight lines are better.
Not only that, because, you know, you gotta remember there's a stop and go light on Packer land and 172.
Right.
Okay, and there's also a stop and go light on Wabi. So when the traffic, by the time the traffic gets from 172 to Paulson, you have a better shot because the traffic probably from down, coming from the south, going to the north, is more distributed for you to get across.
And there's a 30-mile-an-hour zone in there, Brian. Does that go from where to where? Because it's by those residential. It drops to 30. And I don't know if that would be.
It goes all the way down to Wabi.
I don't think it goes that far, does it?
No.
I
It's
think it goes just
35 and
through
then it
those-
goes to 30.
Yeah, it goes. I think from wherever the
So
residents
then it's
are.
gotta be from Paulson.
Maybe it is
supposed to go down
Paulson.
to
There's a 30-mile-an-hour spur
Yeah,
in
there's
there,
speed limit, but-
part in there
Yeah.
for a bit.
And Leroy, you're right, crossing at Paulson gives you more because there's a road over there. You're not pulling into a driveway to a business that you have to worry about
That's the only
Cars
way
coming out.
stuff from the business.
I have crossed that forever. That's where I go across.
So would you think we should put the crosswalk there? Because that's
That's what I would do. I'm just, you know, I'm just,
Well, I don't know if you're
One
saying that,
person.
or if you were saying this one's worse, so we need to put the crosswalk there because it's like, that's what I didn't know. So you're saying put it at Paulson?
it would be,
Because that's
my
already
recommendation would
safer.
be to go to Paulson, but I'm just the biker.
Yep.
You know, I think one thing, there's been so many different ideas, you know, Carroll, Paulson, 172, whatever. The thing that we want to make sure is that it's done properly and it's safe for people to cross. And I don't feel like I have the expertise to say that. You know, like I said, I'm a biker and I'm probably a more daring biker than most because I bike a lot. But I think we need to get the expertise and the knowledge to be able to put it and place it right, make sure it's designed right, whether it's just one side or two sides. And I guess, Brian, my question to you, what are your thoughts on that? You know, when we redesign roads, sometimes like Morris, for instance, we hire a consultant to help us make that decision and make that road. On this, because of all the factors and all the different things with it, should we get someone that specializes in bike and ped accommodations and pedestrian access to be able to, like a traffic engineer or something, to be able to help us with this decision and hire someone to do that?
We definitely could. I mean, by no means am I any expert at it, so I'd be definitely in favor of it just because they're gonna do an analysis that
Right.
they're gonna be able to look at statistics and know that stuff rather than you know, and having the time to do it also.
Right. This is a big decision. I mean, it's been a while, and it's a 4-lane road.
money,
It's
too.
it's money.
If it's
We want to
wrong.
do it, and we want to do it right.
Yeah.
And if we could get the help to do it and do it right, I think that's what's important. I mean, I have feelings. Jessica has feelings on it, and that's great for the input. But I think we need to have someone that really knows what they're doing. And then I would ask Barb about, you know, the neighborhoods with the lack of sidewalks is that an issue for you or your neighbors, the people that signed this? So is that something that they were really like, we need to get a sidewalk to this spot so we can safely cross? Those are residential streets over there. And do we need that? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. You know, is that something that came up at all? Or is it more just the crossing of Packerland that really is the concern?
And would they want those sidewalks in front of their
Yes,
house?
yes, exactly.
Yep.
Yeah,
A rapid flashing beacon itself is most safe, not actually at an intersection like this, it's actually mid-block, because the turn movements of the vehicles at that intersection, you don't have them. You know, when you have it mid-block, all the movements are predictable. Where if you put it mid-block, you can have cars on the side streets. You know, you're gonna hope that they're gonna see that rapid flashing beacon, but ultimately when it's designed for that north and south flow of traffic
Yeah.
out on Packerland. So, you know, if you were to look at a guideline, the guideline's gonna tell you to put it mid-block.
yeah,
Where does it make most sense mid-block? Well, the unfortunate thing is where our residents are,
yeah,
you know, they're on the east side and we don't have any sidewalk or any accommodation on
Right.
the east side.
yep,
So.
to get them there. Yeah,
I mean, to be the most right, you would put sidewalk between Paulson and Carroll and put it mid-block
Mid-block.
between the two.
yeah.
But.
Well, and that's
you're
another
not
thing.
Actually makes a lot of
crazy
sense.
expense.
Yeah, or would it be, you know, a different type of signal? Should a hawk signal be there? Should be a signalized intersection? Are we going, you know,
A
who knows?
signalized intersection is, if you're gonna put it right at an intersection, is gonna be by far the safest.
Yeah,
However, it's gonna have the most cost.
right,
I mean, you're probably $300,000 compared to a standard rapid flashing beacon's about 17,000. So,
Wow.
you know, it's,
Wow.
yeah.
We can put a lot of the rapid flashing around the village for one. Yeah, like we can put a lot of those up for 300,000.
yeah, so there's a lot of factors that go into
Yeah.
it. I mean, you could put in one mid-block, you know, put in a lot of sidewalk, and you might be at that 300,000. And you're gonna probably discourage and make a lot of people mad putting sidewalk in front of their homes.
Yeah,
So,
Well, I think that was
I know that
the
doesn't clear the
idea.
waters, it makes it worse.
but here, yeah,
Well, that was the idea behind the
Thanks, Brian.
conversation too, is we're just plopping a crosswalk somewhere, and what is it connecting to?
Right.
exactly.
So that was the idea, looking at it from a neighborhood perspective, is does it make sense if there are future improvements to be had in that neighborhood, and we're gonna start to encourage walkers in that neighborhood on that, within that new infrastructure, that could change and alter what your traditional patterns have been to date. So yeah, Leroy bikes and he goes down to Paulson because he finds it convenient.
Right.
But if you are focused on pedestrians, in addition to that, if you're gonna reroute a pedestrian another 3 or 4 blocks to get to a safe crossing,
Yep.
they're not going to
gonna
do
Do
it.
it.
Yep,
So looking at it more comprehensively within the neighborhood to say, okay, how does this all connect and interplay with one another?
right.
Maybe bicyclists need a safe crossing at Paulson because that's really where the safest spot is. But we know the most convenient location is further north, you know, whether it's Carroll or not. I'm just throwing out examples. Maybe that's Comanche, maybe it's Carroll, maybe it's the mid-block, it's somewhere. And where are those connecting points? Because that neighborhood is, from a pedestrian standpoint, rather disjointed. You have most sidewalk on Babcock, you have a portion of Ponderosa, and you have a disconnection between Hanson to any of it.
Yeah.
So
Right.
like, if I'm in that
Yes.
neighborhood and I want to go east to Wabi or to Oneida Street or something, how do I get there? If I'm on the west end of this subdivision, this neighborhood, how do I get to Hanson
Yeah.
safely? I don't know that I can yet.
Well, and the plan is to have the sidewalk from there all the way up Carroll to,
Well, yeah, right now there's nothing.
I said there's nothing,
So
but
that
that's
was-
what.
And that's
right,
why I
so-
brought up, you know, the last time we had it at committee, I'm like, we really should look at this because I
Right.
don't know that we're seeing the full picture of whatever.
Because when you
needs to
put it up
happen.
on the map and you show like where,
So this is the map of
open.
current and proposed
Right.
future facilities, and there's nothing.
right,
Yeah.
so
Huge gap, yeah.
should
Yeah.
we, like you said, either have the little zigzag to connect to Ponderosa, or should it be that from Hanson, that sidewalk just goes a straight shot all the way up to Carroll and then putting it at Carroll, is what you're saying?
Yep.
right? Or
Maybe
what,
something,
like, what,
right?
like something
Yep.
though, like to make it fully connect
Well, and is that
In the
something
full
that we
plan.
could have if we do contract it out to have a consultant look at that as well? It's like, this is our desire to get this whole neighborhood safely over to the nice path on the west side of Peckerland. Why don't you look at all of this and give us an idea of what is our best bet? I mean, we do have the sidewalk on Hanson going up to that multifamily. The farthest west one is on our plan,
Yep.
but not really carrying it any
No.
further all the way through.
Yeah, but they'll have that cross, we were gonna put the cross there, that would
Right.
connect them to that yellow, right?
Yes, yeah,
'Cause
to go to
that one goes
Ponderosa
up.
and then out that way. Yeah,
So if when that part gets done,
yeah,
Well, there again, you know, that sidewalk on Ponderosa only goes down to timber.
Right.
And that timber, it stops.
right?
right,
And we only have the proposal to go to the apartments
right,
Right.
on Hanson,
Right,
yeah.
which would be, according to what the last meeting showed, I don't think is until 2028 or something like that,
Yeah.
wasn't it, Joel?
I think we moved it up 1 year,
So
didn't we?
it's
Come
a
on.
ways away. yes.
Okay, it's a ways away, right, I know.
but we
I
also
know.
talked about putting one of the like flashing beacon
Maybe on
things
Hanson,
on
something like that.
Hanson.
Hanson.
In a
Is it in
mid-block.
the
At a
sidewalk
mid-block
outside?
point where their driveway is to the sidewalk that's there.
Side of the road they wanna walk on.
Yeah, I just saw 3 people walking
Yes,
up
you
the
know.
south side.
They're on that
today
side
when I was
constantly.
biking.
They are out
Yeah.
there, they're there all the time.
Yeah, they are, I know, yeah.
Walk on the
Yeah.
grass.
Okay, any other comments on this, you guys? You know, Barb, thank you for coming. We probably should close the floor unless you have anything else to say. Otherwise, I'll get a motion to close the floor.
Just appreciate you looking at it, and I did not ask them specifically about sidewalks, I just asked them about.
Yeah, I know, you just didn't want to go there. You were
No,
smart.
I don't want to ask, yeah, because I know.
Let's put that
when-
down, what is her name?
Yeah. And sidewalks.
Just change the title at the
Yeah.
top of that quick.
Okay, a motion to close the floor,
Thank
please.
I'll motion to close the floor.
I'll second.
Second, Jessica, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thanks,
All right.
Barb.
Yep,
So,
thank you.
before you leave, we're gonna, just so you hear, anyone put a motion on what we wanna do with this? So we can move this forward, so Barb isn't back here 2 years from now again saying, where are we at with this? What do we wanna do?
Let's use your words, what were they? Motion to have, maybe look at possibly hiring
A consultant
consultant
to do a
give
traffic
us-
study and give us an idea on where the RFB, or what kind of crossing it should be, and look at where it should be
Maybe
located.
once we see the cost of the consultant, we'll say, maybe we don't wanna do that. But
You gotta remember that I was only suggesting myself that I cross at Paulson.
Right, and
I'm not
that's
saying
fine.
that you shouldn't put something on Comanche or
Exactly.
Carroll or
No.
Paulson, but those are the only 3 streets
Right, exactly.
until you get down to Skylark,
Yeah, yeah, and that's your preference.
you know.
And then maybe
Yeah.
your preference is Carol or what, you know, everyone, that's why I think someone that really knows and can take all those
cross at
factors
Skylark,
in, like
that's what I
Brian
do.
said, look at everything and
Yeah,
make a good informed decision on that and give us a good recommendation. And then
So-
we're stepping forward.
So
And
is-
maybe put a part of 2025 budget, make a recommendation to go in 2025 budget to have hire a consultant to do
keep
this.
it moving.
So that's
And-
step one, to check into the cost, the feasibility of a consultant, are we saying?
And what would their recommendation be if
Yeah.
they go for the cost? So we can do that right away.
Yeah,
Is that what
yeah,
you're saying?
just a
Because
recommendation
yeah, if they say
maybe
no to the
to,
cost, then it's kind of
yeah,
done.
to ask staff to get a cost and then look at it, putting it 2025 budget, or, you know, put it as an option for 2025 budget. That would be my recommendation. That's moving forward. At least it's moving to village board.
So did you write down how we're gonna make that motion?
So I have a motion to recommend the hiring of a consultant to conduct a feasibility study to establish a safe crossing point on Packerland Drive, somewhere between Paulson and Comanche. How's that sound?
Do you want to add the connectivity piece into that and look at the overall connectivity of
To
it?
you and your.
Do we
I
want
think
to-
we should.
Do we want to say?
If you're gonna have a consultant, you might as well have them look at the whole thing. If you're gonna pay for the consultant, I
Right.
would tell them to look at the
Yes.
whole piece of
Connectivity.
it.
And I don't think we should
neighborhood.
say between Paulson and Comanche, because maybe they're gonna go, wait a minute, we want it down here. You know what I mean? It's limiting them and saying this, so I think we should just leave it open, say, this is what we want.
We want to
This
cross
is-
Packerland safely
Safely.
in that neighborhood.
Yes, to be able to get this neighborhood over
Reference
safely.
said map.
Yeah.
ultimately, I think what we want to accomplish, or the committee is desiring to accomplish, kind of a sub-area plan for bicycle pedestrian improvements in that neighborhood.
Yes,
There you go.
there we go. Okay, who's making that motion?
I'll motion what he said.
Okay, Jessica, who's gonna second?
I'll second.
Second by Kim. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you very much for discussion, Barb. Thank you for bringing this up and
you.
coming to the
Thank
meeting.
you,
Appreciate it.
Barb Town.
We'll keep you in the
Hi,
loop.
Barb.
Barbara.
Barb,
Yeah,
Susie, you wanna go home?
yeah, you wanna ride home?
She got up quick. She's like,
This is your safe exit, much safer ride.
Okay, sounds good. Yep. All right, thank you, Natalie.
I gotta go get the kids.
Yeah.
Okay, six.
Nice article.
See what my while we're sitting in here.
Okay, Glenda. Item 6C.
Wear brake clothing.
Consider discuss
Brian.
locations of proposed rapid flashing beacons on Cormier Road and Holmgren Way. This is kind of similar to what we just talked about, except it's different roads. And Brian, I think you were on this, weren't you? Or was
yeah.
it?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, so ultimately, one of the items that was included in the village's capital improvement plan for 2025 is the installation of rapid flashing beacons, which is what we had just finished speaking about, near the intersection of Holmgren and Cormier. The reason for that is in the northeast corner of Holmgren and Cormier, there's a multi-use development that's going in there. Along with that, it has a very extensive parking lot for 300 vehicles to allow people to park in between, essentially the Capital Credit Union and Epic. So there'll be people kind of traveling throughout this corridor north-south. In there, I have a very elementary drawing of proposed locations of these rapid flashing beacons. The one on Cormier is essentially east of the intersection of Holmgren and Cormier. It is, let's see here, 525 feet east of this intersection. It would tie into, they plan on having an internal walkway within that development. It would tie into an internal walkway that they'll have just west of a stormwater management facility that they have. So, reason for this is with the increased pedestrian traffic, being able to get to and from the different entertainment areas. There was, if my memory serves me right, one accident already on Cormier where a vehicle did hit a pedestrian, trying to get in between the two different locations. The second location is pretty much halfway in between Marvell and Bayland, and it would kind of tie into that entry point of the Rocker Stadium. So with that, there is the alternative location that's shown in that teal color. That is on the north side of Marvell. There is a crosswalk there now. The one thing that I would say is just definitely have some caution when you're putting those rapid flashing beacons at an intersection. Say someone's using it, say they're going east on Marvell, turning left to go north on Holmgren. They could, essentially be turning right into that rapid flashing beacon. Hopefully they see it, they should see it. But it isn't a normal signal that you're generally looking at when you're coming up to an intersection, so.
So just as a recall, we talked about, I think in the last meeting and as part of the budget process, three rapid flashing beacons. There were some conversations about the location of those at our last meeting in relation primarily to the intersection, I think, of Holmgren and Cormier, the overall distance of that. Based on that conversation and staff's review prior to today's meeting, as Brian had mentioned, having those RRFDs or Bs at those intersections actually creates more challenges than having them at mid-block. So what's proposed on the map here is basically a mid-block crossing. So they wouldn't be at controlled intersections, either Bayland Court or Marvell Lane. They would be at mid-block on Holmgren and then theoretically mid-block on Cormier. And it would tie in both kind of the parking areas that are across the street for that new development to the Epic, and then kind of mid-block between Bayland and Marvell to accommodate any crossing traffic for attendees going to Capital Credit Union Park for a Rockers game.
Yeah, the one thing I would say with the signalized intersection at Cormier and Holmgren, I know there was some concerns expressed on the proximity. So the we'll say hybrid RRFB. There's a very fancy RRFB at Ridge by Lodge Kohler. That essentially is 460 feet from the intersection of Ridge and Lombardi. And believe it or not, I mean, aside from when it's overly congested down there anyways, there's really no impacts in between the operation of the RRFB and the signalized intersection. Doesn't cause backups or anything like that unless there's already pre-existing traffic issues that you're not going to rectify. So.
And actually, as somebody who uses that Holmgren and Cormier intersection to cross to either Rockers, or I'm there pretty often, and it's awful crossing at that intersection. I actually love where that's proposed. I think that will be way safer for people who are parking where the Epic Event Center is and crossing to go to the Rocker Stadium. I actually think it's great.
There's less traffic movements. You know, ultimately there should only be cars coming from two different directions. So, and the cars that are there, I mean, aside from ones that may be coming in and out of parking lots, which is almost impossible to avoid, it's just a lot more predictable. Your conflict points are far less.
And you said they're gonna put something in the development that also is kind of coming to that spot
Aaron, I
too.
don't know if you know, there is a walkway somehow around their parking lot. There's a stormwater management facility on the east side of their development, and then there's a walking path that kind of, it's like L-shaped around on the north and east side of that development.
Yeah,
That sounds great.
Do you think we would want them to, if say this went in where the two red marks are, would we want to get rid of the blue crosswalk? Because there's a crosswalk where the blue line is right now.
Just a standard
Would
one.
we
Or just-
would we be keeping that? And then would the people from Marvell just decide to use that crosswalk and not use the flashing beacon?
I hope that just with the enhancement there, they would just start to use it on their own. I don't know if we would necessarily get rid of that crosswalk, just because it's just kind of your standard crosswalk, and there is a bus stop location there.
Yep.
Right in front of Village Hall here, and
Yep.
I think just leave it there for the time being.
Minus the chicken.
And we're trying to get those to wear off.
Chicken feet, yeah.
There's chicken footprints
From the old
painted
Booyah.
through it.
That was kind of my question is,
Yeah.
from your experience, and we probably don't have any experience there where you have that at a crosswalk, but would you get those people to move down to the center to cross versus crossing at the intersection itself?
Yeah.
You're not
There
gonna
is
know, I guess,
sidewalk.
until you do it.
There's
Yeah,
sidewalk.
there is
Lead them right
sidewalk.
to it, yeah, why?
Yeah, there's sidewalk there.
Yeah, there is all the way along, so. Brian, I know Cole Runge did the study of Holmgren. I don't think he did Cormier at all. What was his recommendations on the locations of RRFBs? Did he put a precise location? Do you guys remember? I didn't have a chance to review that. Because he
don't
recommended
recall
them.
it having a recommendation for location. I know
Okay.
it spoke of them, but I'd have to look again.
Okay. Yeah, I don't remember if he recommended either. I just remember them being mentioned in there. And I don't know if it'd be worth revisiting with him or getting some feedback from him, because he obviously thought RFBs were a good thing to put along the corridor. But another part of that was he also had them in there based on the road being a 3-lane configuration versus the 4. So that may change also location a little bit because of you're talking about a totally different road character than the 3-lane that he was kind of looking at when he did his study. So I don't know if we could revisit that and just see what his thoughts would be on that for the intersections or the sites for it.
Should look at the plan again and reach out to Cole, see if he has any direct input.
I like the two spots that you have it on too. I think you could even almost say this is what we're thinking. I don't know who Cole is, but.
Oh, he was the one that did the study for us.
But I don't know how easy, like accessible he is, just
He
more.
works for the county, he's a
Yeah.
county.
Yeah, just saying like, how's this look?
Yep.
You know, because I think it looks
Challenging.
great. Makes sense where you're having it, everything you described, and the future plans for it. I mean,
This is just the site plan of that Spark development, so there's a sidewalk that
it'll
runs
connect.
east of the parking lot that eventually connects up over to Holmgren
So
this way.
that's awesome.
This is a stormwater pond, so the crossing would connect that sidewalk here to the sidewalk on the other side of Cormier.
And the one thing, concern I have is there's a driveway coming out, Joel, if you can just note it. coming out of that development just to the west, one over two. So that's another concern, you know, you have people coming in and out, they're taking rights and
Yeah,
left
trying to
side there.
cross at the
And you're
same
trying to
time.
cross, so that's a concern, you know, to, you know,
Yeah.
with this proximity to that driveway exit too. Even having the two, which I tried to pull the one out, but that wouldn't go anywhere.
So is that the building that's in the middle?
No, this is all parking here.
That's
The
all
building is right
Massive
here.
parking.
Okay.
They're building the parking lot to accommodate not only the apartment and the retail, but also Rockers Stadium and then the Epic Event Center. So it's more parking than
Super
what would be
smart.
necessary for
Okay.
the
Yeah, so
single
they'd be
development.
crossing both ways,
Thank God.
depending on
Yeah.
what they're going to.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. My feelings on this too is because this is a big deal and these are gonna be expensive to put in. We wanna put them in the right place. We want them designed properly. We want them to be effective and safe for the users. I think we should get a consultant to look at this as well.
So east.
And
We
look at
likely would get a consultant because we'd have them put together formal engineering plans, we'd bid it out, just because it is an improvement greater than 25,000, so.
So it'll
through
go through
state
that
statutes, we
process.
have to.
Okay, so you would get a consultant and maybe someone that specializes in this
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
thing and make sure that
Yeah.
they're located where they should be and all that good stuff.
Yep.
And if we're planning to do that anyways, I feel like we can just say, let's say we agree with
Since you're
where it is.
looking
I
at
say we're
this,
already.
look over here too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like, yeah, you're doing Pack-A-Land, why don't you do Holmgren and Cormier at the same time and save money on all of
If it's
it?
children's rates.
Bulk rates for all of that. And Brian, I didn't think about the intersection with Marvell, that it's a controlled one with an RFP. I'm glad that you mentioned that, because I didn't even think of that, because like you said, that's probably not a common place for it to be located.
No, I mean, if you looked at criteria, it'd be a lower
One thing.
rated
Yeah,
location to place one.
yeah.
So what do you need from us? Anything? Are we good? We can just
This
keep
is
going?
FYI.
Perfect.
Can we make a motion to, I mean, Brian already said the consultants, but can we make a motion that we would like the consultants to look at it too as well? And give us ideas on what it is?
This item is actually in the 2025 budget, I think, CMP.
We're good.
Joel, I'm fairly certain, so if it gets approved as part of the budget, we'll start working through that process regardless, so.
And you said it's above the cost threshold, so you have to, right?
We have to competitively bid it.
So,
Yep.
no matter what, it'll get looked at. Sounds good.
Okay, so the consultant will help with design, site, and all that stuff as part of what will be done with it, so. And you guys looking at that, the two locations that they have pinpointed? No issues with that, you guys are okay with that? And then the third one at Marvell, are you gonna have them look at that too, Brian, or are you just gonna wait on that, or what?
I would probably just not give them a location and let them go to work.
Okay.
And then see if they align with what I had in mind.
Okay.
So,
Okay,
There
that
may
sounds,
be, there may
sounds
be
great.
other conflicts too, just to be aware beyond just pedestrian crossing. There's utilities and other issues that could be
Yeah.
on the
Yeah.
way, so
Didn't think of that, yeah.
that could alter precise locations. But there's a variety
But that'll be
of
your
factors.
headache, not ours, so.
I think what this committee really should be focusing on is the bigger picture,
Right.
right? Do we want two crossings here? Do we want to accommodate a mid-block crossing?
Yeah.
For pedestrians into these areas? The technical details, that's an operational
That's what he
issue.
can
We'll
figure
figure
out.
that out from our end to make sure that it's meeting the standards. You should be really focused on the bigger picture.
Yeah.
Bigger picture, I
So
think
do we
is
have
good.
to motion on that?
Do you guys want to do, you can do a motion if you want.
The only motion I think is
one, though.
necessary is if
Okay.
there's a change to what you've already
Oh, seen?
seen. If this
No,
is proposed
okay.
as part of the budget, this has worked its way through committee.
Then I'm fine
The only
with
reason
that.
why it's coming back is because the committee was questioning locations as far as distance to intersections, the number of them, so on and so forth.
I'm
So
fine with it then. That's,
Okay. Any other
Correct.
questions or discussion on that, anybody?
You had mentioned that there's already a crossing sidewalk coming off of,
Marvell.
It's a cr- yeah.
no, not off of
There's a
Marvell, off of
crosswalk.
Cormier. Off of the, going from the Epic Center over into that, is there a crossing there already?
so there's.
Where you got the mark, if the mark goes down further,
There is not a mid-block crossing.
No.
Not a mid-block.
I thought that's what you had.
Intersection.
At Cormier and Hanson.
He was
there's-
talking about the.
Marvell and
Traditional.
Holmgren there is.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there's
I thought it was,
there's a-
I thought you were talking about,
There's a crosswalk at the intersection of Marvell and Holmgren that crosses Holmgren
Yeah.
on the north side of the intersection. It's kind of that northwest, northeast quadrant, if you will, of that intersection. There is a marked crosswalk.
So my
They used to
question
have
was whether
chicken-
we would keep
There's
that
chicken
one.
feed
Yeah.
in it and all that stuff for
okay,
chickens wanting to dive into the booyah pot.
right.
I think what
Which
we
is no
should,
longer
my
there.
personal opinion is I think we should paint it with piano keys now.
Oh, that's fun.
But Brian doesn't want to go with that because now that's two colors of paint and
You can maintain it on.
Piano keys would be fun. Pulaski, did you see the thing in Pulaski?
The
they have
murals?
piano keys.
They
did a
did
whole
their
mural.
first multicolor crossing, like artwork crossing.
Yeah.
Okay.
But they, it was the first one in Brown County, it said.
Maybe I can get Bo to do that.
Right
Paint
by
that
the school.
crosswalk.
I think
The
Bo
rockers
did.
thing.
Yeah, I thought it was cool.
Yeah, I did too.
Brian, are they legal to do it that way? I heard
I don't
mixed.
think so.
I was
but
thinking
would-
they weren't, and then I thought they were, and then I looked up again, and I thought they weren't.
I
So,
don't think they're legal, but I mean,
I guess the MUTCD does not recommend or
No,
say that you
no,
should do
it definitely would
that.
not be
Yes.
recommended.
No.
And I
Yeah.
don't know what's gonna happen after the first winter season.
That's-
Kind of
saying
goes
we
along with our
torn up and
community
scraped
arts
up.
initiative, though.
Yeah.
I think if somebody got a bucket of sidewalk chalk, they could
Just,
just.
there you go. Okay, nothing else on C, then we'll move on to D. Consider, discuss, act on improvements to the bicycle corridor in the southern part of the village. I had asked this to be put on mainly because it sounds like West Main is not going to happen until 2027, 2028, correct? Because when they redo that bridge, am I right on that timeline?
2028, so right now the
Okay.
county is looking at just the condition of that bridge. They did deem that the deck on that bridge needs to be replaced. However, the girders and everything, so the substructure are in good condition.
Yep.
So when they redeck it, we'll be working with them to see if there's anything they can do, to make that sidewalk any wider, but likely not.
Yeah.
But the thought process would be is that our project will occur at the same time as theirs, so you don't have to shut down Main Ave 2 years in a row, or, impact Main Ave 2 years, so.
So, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to discuss this, because that's a ways out. And that's an east-west connection to De Pere and getting people over to De Pere and potentially onto Broadway and the bike lane. So this is Strava. I don't know if anybody has ever heard of Strava, but basically what it is, and I asked Sarah to put it up for us, or just to help in the discussion, but it is, bicyclists use this and they put their rides out on it, and it creates a heat map, and it shows in communities and areas where people are bicycling. And the darker the color on the road, the more bicyclists are using that facility. So if you look on this, when you go, can you bring it up just a little bit, Sarah, to West Main? So West Main, you can see, just bring it, maybe scoot it up a little further.
Actually, yeah.
There you go. West Main is dark on Peace, but then it gets lighter. Maybe bring bigger again, Sarah, move it up again.
We're gonna go out to the south, Sarah, if you can, just a little bit, and scroll, zoom in a little bit, if you
Yeah.
don't mind. There you go. There you go. Couple
Okay.
more. There
And
you
then
go.
we scoot up a little bit. So you see West Main is fairly dark. You see Wabi is used, and Wabi probably because you got the trail on the south side on the one piece, and then when you get further closer over, then when it turns into Oneida, there's not as many people that are going on Oneida on Wabi. But Packerland is this one right here. And you can see that's pretty dark. A lot of bicyclists are using Packerland to get across to either back and forth to Ashland to.
Talking Glory?
Pardon?
Glory you're talking
Yeah, I
about?
was gonna say,
Yeah,
Isn't this Broadway?
not Packer.
Or getting over to
Drift in?
the bike.
That's
Broadway.
Parkway, right?
Getting over to Broadway and heading
Broadway,
north or
yeah.
south. They're going into De Pere.
Yep.
So Packerland's getting used quite heavily. And you see Hanson up here. I believe this is Hanson, if I'm right. It's pretty
Impulsive.
used pretty good to get to Oneida Street, and then it gets a little less once you go between
probably
Oneida
me.
It's you.
and down to Broadway. But it's just to give you guys an idea where bicyclists are using in our community and what roads they're using. So if you look at this, one of the bigger ones probably is Packerland.
No.
I'm sorry, Parkview.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. Parkview.
That's where I'm
will do.
going with it.
I'm sorry. It's probably one of the bigger ones, and then Wabi is used heavily because of the trail. Up till you get to where it changes to Oneida Street, and it just gives you again a good idea of where bicyclists are using it now. Then if you look at the corridors, so if you look at Glory, which you can see is used pretty good too. The one thing I think a lot of bicyclists and people are afraid of is the roundabout. A lot of bicyclists are scared to death of roundabouts. So you can see it's getting used, but not as heavily as Parkview. And Glory Road right now, you go to the roundabout to get across Ashland. But as you're moving on Glory, heading that way, when you get to that residential area, it's narrow. It narrows down. It's a big, wide shoulder when you're in the industrial area and you come over the bridge over 41. Then you get to that one section between basically where the bridge is on the east side all the way to Ashland, and it narrows down a lot. So bicyclists are getting pinched in there as well. So maybe that's one reason they're not going on Glory quite as much. When you go to Parkview, again, it's one of the places that is used the most. It has a wide shoulder. It has an easy crossing on Ashland because it's designed, to let them go to one section, look at the traffic coming from the south, and then go to the next and look at the traffic coming the other way. And then you get to Wabi and Oneida. We talked about that. Oneida, a lot of people aren't going to bike on Oneida. And it's hard to get through there, but Wabi is good on the west end of it. Hanson has bike lanes. So it has bike lanes all the way down, take you to Broadway. The thing that's tough on Ashland for bicyclists is on Hanson is crossing Ashland because you have to push a button. And to get to that button, you're just about falling off your bike, or you have to get off your bike to try to push the button to get across Ashland. So that makes that more difficult for bicyclists. So maybe that's why they're not using Hanson quite as much. So I was just thinking we should really look at, because we're not going to get West Main for a long time. And we need to start looking at some of the other access points. And maybe there's some smaller improvements that can be done on some of those other ones to make it easier and more palatable for people to bike on some of those northern sections to get them across to Broadway, and then get on the nice bike lanes on Broadway and get to the new trail that goes in the park and the new bridge. So that was my reason behind it. And Strava just is where bicyclists go. This is data from bicyclists that ride through our community. When we go out biking, sometimes we're going into other communities, we'll pull up the Strava data from that community so we can see where the locals biking. So it gives us an idea where to go and what are the roads that are more palatable for biking than others. So it's just another way to really look at our roads and see, where they're at. So, I guess more informational today, but I would like to continue to look at this and maybe take these other roads piece by piece and see, okay, what would make them easier to travel on, or what would make them more, easier for bicyclists to get on. What are there's some simple things that can be done.
Do people physically put the information into an app?
They put their bike, I don't use it as much, maybe Leroy can explain it better, but you kind of turn it on when you take off on your bike, and it maps the whole thing. It tracks you. Yes, and then when you get home, you just end it.
A lot of sense.
And then it goes into this whole system of all bicyclists in the area, and then it starts to create the heat maps. And this is available for communities. I know Wello has an access to it and uses it quite a bit with their stuff as well. It's just a good way to give you an idea of where they're going. You can see Broadway, how dark Broadway is. That's a great place to bike. Yeah. And you can see the Fox River Trail.
The trail, yeah.
It's really heavy because that's where everybody's biking. They're going on the trail. You can just see the roads. Webster is kind of okay on the east side. So it just gives you an idea as a bicyclist, especially coming into a new community, or if you're planning a route, you're going to work and you've never biked there before, but you want to, you may look and go, hey, this would be a good way for me to get there. It looks like a lot of bicyclists are heading that way.
We've struggled with this, right? Trying to get people to West Pier. And
yeah.
If anybody wants to see Strava, they can come over here and they can look at Strava. I got it on my phone here, so.
Yeah, so yeah,
you that.
What? I do use it.
yeah,
It is, yeah.
yeah.
So his wife can keep track of it.
Yeah, well, and you can, I mean, I can see exactly where Peter's
Oh,
going,
it's like a
yeah,
phone, eh?
Like Life 360.
yeah,
I don't have it, but I hear about it.
Strava.
No, the Life 360 where you can track every
Oh, I got
Oh, yeah.
that too.
effort.
So I don't know, anybody else have anything you want to add to it or anything we want to look at in the future to kind of keep that in mind? Because it's going to be a long ways out till West Main's done. I mean, that's 4 or 5 years from now, unfortunately. Before that's going to be a really good crossing over into the pier that'll be safe and easy for most people to feel comfortable using. It's just a way for us to start really looking and seeing, okay, how can we make it easier for people?
I know you had mentioned Hanson Road.
Yep.
I use Hanson Road.
Me too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I really have had no troubles going down Hanson Road to Broadway, and most of the time there's always, the stop and go lights themselves are no problems because there's always traffic down there and
Yeah.
it stops, and you can go and, I mean,
Yeah. Yeah, because it won't trigger for a bicyclist, obviously, or motorcycle. It won't
Right.
change from. So then if you're there on your own, you have to try to get to the button, which is a pain in the butt to get to.
yeah.
Well, with that, because you mentioned it twice now, is that in our bike and ped plan that we need to take a look at making that more accessible, that button?
Well, and
Yeah.
that's,
I mean,
that
that
would be
seems like
great.
an easy fix.
That is, yes. And that's what I'm saying. These roads all probably have easy fixes that maybe, if we look at Glory, maybe there's some things at Glory that make it easier and make it easier to go. Hanson is putting an extender on that button. Put it out so you can reach it without falling off your bike to try to get at it, or something, So yeah, you're right. I think there's some simple things on some of these roads that are already being used to make it even easier for people and more conducive for people to safely move along them. And
Those roundabouts, that's just, people just aren't educated enough. I mean, somebody just told me they were going down a roundabout and the guy's going across the intersection with his bicycle and the guy's blowing the horn at him like he wasn't supposed to be there.
yeah,
How's he supposed to get across?
right.
I mean, just people don't think they got the right of way, but people don't know that because they're
Right.
not educated enough to know that they have the right of way.
Yeah. And the bicyclists and the roundabout, the safest thing for them is take the lane. They have to take
Because
the
I
lane.
can see why somebody wouldn't want to go to that roundabout off
Yeah,
of
I
Glory
mean, a lot
Road.
of-
I wouldn't want to take that chance.
Yep, a lot of people don't like roundabouts, either by car or by bike, so.
Is there, I noticed that there's an all sports. I wonder if there's a difference between cycle activities versus some of the other sports, because I think this is tracking hiking and walking and all that stuff. Is there a way to see the difference? Is there a difference between that? Would we see a differential?
I don't
Change?
know, Joe, I'm not really.
There's that drop down for all sports. I don't
Try
know,
that
Sarah,
once.
if you're able
Sarah,
to-
can you see what that
See that
does?
little drop down that says all sports kind of in the middle of the screen? If you click that and just do like all,
Walk or like
Or
click
ride.
one of them.
yeah, try
Not
all
swim.
cycle
All
sports.
cycle
Let's try
sports?
that one.
It will show walking.
There you go. So it changes a little,
Little
bit.
bit.
Not a whole lot though.
No,
You're right though.
It will show walking, but the people that
and
are
the,
on that don't show it in their app, on their app.
the reason why I wanted to see that is because I saw Oneida Street was really dark blue before when it was all sports, and I always hear that Oneida Street is a pretty challenging street to bike on, just with the tight lanes. But it does see a lot of walking, right? There is
Yes,
sidewalk,
there's
sidewalk
sidewalks.
lane, so there's a
Yeah.
lot of people
Yeah.
walking on Oneida. So
Yeah.
that Oneida Street lightened up, but then other like Glory Road, for example, Parkview. What is that?
West Main,
Cross
yeah.
Street that runs down Wabi. What is that? Why can't I think of it?
Ridge? No.
Yeah, is that
Is it Ridge?
Ridge
Yeah.
that darkened up too again?
Yeah.
But then when you look at Wabi and Oneida Street, especially South Oneida Street and the first part of Wabi, there's nobody there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So it's just interesting that it did change.
yeah. Yeah, because,
A lot of
we
people
did have all.
using Skylark, looping around Waterford. Look how dark that is.
Well, and that, we
Yeah,
already
it's
discussed
better.
this item, but kind of that neighborhood planning standpoint of where are people walking, where are people biking, and are
Right.
we providing the infrastructure and the accommodation to account for that?
Right,
And that's kind of the thought process. And so Pioneer to Skylark to to Packerland, that looks like it's a busier stretch, and it's
Yeah.
connecting school, 3 parks in the
Yeah.
grand scheme of things.
Yeah.
Should there be some connectivity there?
Well, it takes you out to the, if you want to
Takes
get
you
to the
out to-
path as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Takes you out to the path.
That's the way I go.
That's the way I go, yep.
So this could be a really good tool to kind of map
Right.
out neighborhoods and do some sub-area planning to see
Yep.
what would be that preferred route for accommodations.
Yeah, I mean, it has really good information as what people are using. You know, it's kind of like the footpath you see when you put a sidewalk in and then everyone goes this way instead, and there's all the footpaths. So you go, oh, should have put the sidewalk over there. So this gives you an idea, creates the heat map, and telling you what people are using now.
So
And
dark
But this
that
is
section
just
on Hanson
collected by
Road.
people who have
What?
the
Do you
app
see how dark Hanson
and
Road
turn
is?
it
Yeah.
on.
yes,
Okay.
it's kind of like, I'm trying to think of a good way to.
It's a little more serious
Right.
biker, runner.
Yeah, I would say you're talking about someone that rides a little bit more and
Yeah.
does a little more riding, and they would want to get their rides and see how far they went and how fast and all that good stuff, you know?
So it's probably more for people that are either recreational or doing this for recreational or
Transportation.
fitness purposes, not so much transportation, do you
Maybe,
think?
maybe. I mean, I use it when I come here, and I'm coming here for transportation purposes, so I think you probably get some of that, or people are riding to work.
I don't mean any offense to this,
No,
Tracy, but you're a special user, right?
I am very special, yes. Yes.
I wonder if others would
Like
use it for
turn it
that
on to
purpose.
track like they're.
Right.
Yeah,
Definitely
like people use
recreational
their
fitness,
Apple
because I
Watch.
use All Trails app for hiking and stuff, and it's really kind of cool
Yeah.
to track
yeah, and see
how
where
many,
other.
how many
yeah.
miles you did, your elevation,
Yes.
climb, all that stuff.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Yep. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I would love to see us put this back on and start looking at some of those northern sections and just really look at them in detail and say, okay, what is good about it, what's bad about it? Because we want to be able to move people back and forth between the communities and especially get to Broadway, because that's the only north-south bike lane in the village of Ashwaubenon. That's it. And you got a beautiful park there with the nice trail system now. We want to be able to get them safely there. You got the same issue that we just talked about at Packerland. The whole west side of Ashwaubenon, if they can't get to the trail or get to, Ashwaubenon maybe by foot or bike,
Actually,
it's not good.
Ashwaubenon River Trail is quite dark on this map. I was kind
It
of
is.
looking at that.
Yeah.
That's nice.
Yep, it's already been being used, Rex.
Yeah.
Crazy.
It's Sharon, it's wonderful. The diversity, like families, all,
Good.
it's just incredible, the use on the trail.
Good.
Yeah.
Jerry, you even think about all that area that's being built where the golf course was. There's
Yeah.
a lot of houses going up. in
There is a lot of
There's
houses.
gonna be a lot more.
On that
Right.
trail with
Yep.
no one.
That development, and then when they
Where
do the
there's
bagel
no one?
thing,
Yeah.
think of the volume of people that are
Yeah.
gonna be in that
Oh,
area.
there's also-
Yeah.
Yeah, I would prefer.
And then being able to get, at least they can get the
You know
west
what I
of
mean?
here,
I don't
but
want-
Yeah.
But they are always,
Still,
they
how
are
do you get
always out there.
Yep.
the rest of us to west of here.
Right,
Yeah.
And then to east of here, of course.
right.
There's
Yeah.
not always people in the park.
So if nothing else, anything
No.
else, you guys have anything else you want to look at or talk about with this? Otherwise, maybe we can put it on the next agenda and start looking at roads. Maybe we pick, Glory and Parkview or something to look at and say, okay, what's there, what's not, what's good, what's bad? And like Rex said, maybe it's a simple fix. It's a extender for the button.
Like you just said, if people are using Hanson that much, I would think that one of the first things we want to look at is that intersection. Is it a simple fix to get to that
Make life
button?
a little simpler
I mean,
for you guys.
infrastructure's already there.
Right.
You just need to put a little concrete down so people can easier
Yep,
push
or
it.
you extend the button out so
Or
you can
extend the
reach it.
button out.
Yep, yeah.
Yep.
And that's a state highway, so we'd have to, I'm sure Brian worked with the state on that to see, they originally put the buttons in, I'm sure. 'cause
That
they
was for
would've been-
people with long arms.
I have long arms and I just about fall over.
Yeah, I'm surprised they would miss something like that.
Yeah,
But who knows?
Probably put in a while ago.
Leery about
It
Is it?
crossing
Oh, it was.
I know.
that was a while
I
ago.
would
so,
like to.
Yeah,
like,
and there's a
walk
button, I
or
think.
walk.
Yeah, it was better.
What, Sharon?
Nothing.
No. All right, any other comments on this or anything else that we want to do? Otherwise, I would recommend we put it on the next agenda and start picking off those roads and looking at them more in detail and start maybe just moving north of West Main and the access crossings to crossing Ashland and
So
getting us
you
to the
need a
east.
motion like we want to look at areas to connect, for connectivity to other,
To move our residents to the east.
okay, what about south? What about,
Well, I think if we can
What about-
focus on moving that way, east-west, and then
Okay,
we can maybe
yeah.
take care of north and south, look at that later, you know,
Sure.
and do that, so.
All right,
Okay, did you want to make that motion?
so motion to look at access to the east,
East-west access.
yeah, east-west access. How's that sound?
Yep. Second by anybody?
I'll second.
Second by Sharon. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Great, thank you, folks. Okay, last agenda item, consider discuss on a planned unit development PUD, Aaron, you're finally up over there. For a multi-use residential development. We could have moved you up, Megan, sorry. Should have moved you up, sorry.
No, it's all right.
For a multi-use residential development on parcel VA 733-2 Alice Pagels LLC property.
Joel, can you bring that up on screen though?
Yeah, where can I find it?
Sarah, thank you for bringing that
Go
up.
to
I can-
community development. Or else it's in the packet as well.
Yeah, I can- community
Tracy.
development project.
PUD
Our neighborhood annual meeting started at 5.
2024.
We'll still be at quorum. I
Yep.
hate to miss this, but I have to swing.
Yeah,
That should be.
So do we have the ability, like, instead of him having to sit here the whole time to move his-
Revised concept?
we should have.
Revised, yeah,
That's
right.
right.
Okay, so we do have,
Yes, and that's, at the
Yes.
beginning of the meeting, that's why I said with the agenda moving Barb up, but
Have
then.
to-
Aaron, I'm sorry, please let me know, and we could have moved you up. You didn't have to sit through all this.
No, either I did or Brian did or
that's
Brian
true.
did. So
That's true.
Either
So
way, someone
Brian,
can
you
do
won,
last.
Brian, you won this time, Aaron gets it next, okay?
Yeah, no worries at all. So while Joe's bringing it up here, what this is a proposed residential development for the, we call it the Pagels property. It's Alice Pagels, is the Van family. As you can see on screen there, to the north is West Main Avenue, subject of a lot of discussion just recently. As well as then this is South Ridge, and then here is Ponds Edge Court. Pagels Place, Astor Court, Arts Lane. Proposal is to bring in an extension of Pagels Place from the west to the east with a future extension to the north to Spirit Lane. It's a future extension because this property owner, although involved with this development, is not necessarily part of this development, okay? And he is not, at this point, interested in extending the street basically through his house. So basically a temporary cul-de-sac here, again, with plans for a future street up to Spirit. The single-family homes are generally smaller in size, similar to the existing Woods Edge development to the south. So you look at the lots and houses right here, you see similar lot sizes here in the south and north of Pagels Place. Proposing also 24 condominium townhomes. So your two-story type kind of walk-up look like you might see. 10 windows, and then 64 kind of conventional apartments tucked here up against the creek. You also see a stormwater pond, environmentally sensitive areas, a trail extension, the Sand Acres Trail, through the development here to Arts Lane.
nice.
Arts Lane, unfortunately, cannot connect streetwise because of the existing development. These parcels come up basically right here and right here, but there's a tail right-of-way that's about 20 feet wide that does extend this way for that trail connection up to Arts, eventually to West Main Avenue. So a really nice connection there for Sandy Acres, both to the park and then also north to West Main.
Where
One-
would that, I'm sorry, where would that go through to West Main then? With
Yeah,
the gas line continuing?
The gas line continues goes something like this, I think, and then zigzags up here.
So plans would be to continue that trail on that gas line then, you think, in the future, or not?
That I don't know. I think probably knowing that the trail's gonna connect right here to West Main and that trail.
Okay.
You know, right now, there's no plans for that.
Okay,
I think that gas main does extend on that private parcel, that private property.
That's right, yeah, it does right here.
There's an
and then there's
easement,
that
yeah.
Yeah, I've
Pressure,
seen
pressure
that,
meter
yeah.
right there.
yeah. Okay.
So I don't know that we would have access to that at that time.
Right.
Okay.
Congratulations to the Bike and Ped Committee. This is the first subdivision in the village of Ashwaubenon that will have sidewalks on both sides from the get-go like this. So feather your cap. That was a change that was made to the subdivision ordinance a couple of years ago for any new preliminary plats that came through. This is our first preliminary plat that does require sidewalks on both sides of all streets.
Can I clarify that? So the road that you see going through, like where the condos and the townhomes and then the multifamily, will those have
This?
sidewalks too? Yeah, or is
No,
that considered private drive or what?
That's just the driveway. Yeah,
Okay.
so that would not have necessarily have sidewalks on it. Whether they, in their final design, actually have some sort of internal sidewalk connection, they may, but I don't know at this time.
And then the same with the multifamily, will that's private road through there too? So
Correct.
they would not have sidewalks on there?
They may, a lot of apartment complexes, they do have sidewalk in front, but we'll see it with the final plans. This is the preliminary planned unit development, so we don't have detailed architectural or engineering for this yet. Village board did approve the preliminary planned unit development at their last village board meeting. The developer's working through the final planned unit development currently, but I would anticipate that probably not coming through until sometime, I'm gonna guess, January, February, at the earliest. I think they really want to do their due diligence on this and make sure things are done correct.
Those lots to the south, those are residential.
Yes.
Those are homes.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, so these are all homes down here. Then you have these kind of condominium type development.
Yeah, those I'm familiar with.
Yeah.
I'm saying that part of the development, those ones, those are actually gonna be for homes.
Yes,
Those
these
are
right here.
condominiums, okay.
Right, yep, they'll be single-family
Yep.
homes. They may have a homeowners association, but it will be individual home ownership. So really, this is just more informational to Bike and Ped. Again, congratulate you guys on the sidewalks. And I guess stay tuned for the final planned unit development. Like I said, should come through sometime next year.
Are we gonna require bike racks in the multifamily and in the condo duplexes? Is
It's
that
for-
something that we will require?
So these will all have their own individual garages and everything.
Okay,
We do have that as a condition of approval for the apartments, is to include bike racks.
okay.
Consistent with the, I forget the AP.
APBP?
Thank you.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. Then the other question I have, we have the stormwater pond, and I would assume we're gonna have a maintenance road around there so that Public Works or whoever can take care of that, whoever will
Correct.
be responsible for it.
Yep.
Is there a way to have that be accessible for a trail, that you could put a trail and then they could wander around that pond? And also maybe in the future, when this develops, like let's say you got this that goes around here and then eventually it goes up there? Could that be something to do?
Yeah, I mean, sure, anything's possible. It's whether the developer wants to take that on or
Just like
not,
that,
because we don't have the,
Oh.
there's
yeah, sure.
nothing that says, hey, you need to do this, because if the developer wants to do it, cool.
Yeah.
But I don't have a hammer to say you shall do this.
Yeah.
There is a easement that runs to the back to the pond.
Right here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking if that
So,
could
I
be,
mean, we could
Yeah.
travel around it if we wanted
Yeah.
to, something like that.
yeah, and because it's really pretty back there. I mean, I bike back there.
Mhm.
Obviously, it'll look much different once it's built, but it's really nice back there along the creek. And even out of that multifamily, that little loop that comes out to the environmentally sensitive area, if there was a cut through there, that all those people in that multifamily, if there was a trail they could get back in that area too, would be nice. So they don't have to go back out, that they would have access off that little loop at the end and get into some kind of path that goes around that pond. Would be a nice asset to that
Yeah.
development.
I know it does start to get pretty steep right here, which is why it's ESA.
Okay,
But, I'm sure there's some way to,
yeah, to go on the green
Right.
and tie into that.
yeah. So that's all I had on that.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks.
yep, appreciate the info.
Made it really easy not to have to argue about sidewalks. I mean, really,
That's,
yeah.
that's the point of it.
Right?
Yeah.
So, oh man. All right, any other comments on that development, everybody? Anything that want to add or for them to look at when it comes through final or anything else? All right. Then items for next agenda. So we're gonna have the motorized or the ordinances back. Me and Natalie will find some for education, so we'll tie those two together. And then if we can do the south, start looking at the roads on the south that run east-west. That'll be an agenda item. anything else, any other agenda items, any other development coming up, Brian, that you think we should look at, or anything for 2025? No? Rex, anything on your end? Okay. Anybody else on the
The
agenda?
only thing to note is I think Kyle had mentioned it in some correspondence this past week. We are still planning on, and it is currently in the budget, to replace and reconstruct the sidewalk on North Cormier, on the north side of Cormier in 2025. So that is in the budget. I think you guys are doing some preliminary survey work out
Yeah,
there
we're-
presently, so if there's stakes and markers and things like that, that's what that is.
That'll be good, that's so needed. I was out there the other day, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's really in bad shape. All right,
How do you decide when to replace the entire sidewalk versus replacing sections of the sidewalk?
Yeah, so that's what we're actually looking at right now. Our engineer tech's out there doing some investigation. So we're looking at, what's obviously cracked, heaved, all that stuff, but then what is and what is not ADA compliant. So,
Yeah, okay.
looking at it as a whole. We're finding out that there's quite a few sidewalk panels that are very near ADA compliant or just being a hair too much tilted.
Yeah.
So we're trying to get a good, we're currently quantifying what that looks like so we can put together a budget. But it is in the capital improvement plan to hopefully do that construction next
The
year.
reason I ask you that is because when you go by Pioneer School, you guys replaced sections, but there's obviously a lot of cracked sidewalks. It's not heaved, but it's cracked, so I was just curious where the thought was there.
Yeah, so
only
if the
doing
cracks turn
sections.
into a location where, there's a greater than a 1/4 inch of deviation
Okay.
between the two different panels, then they either get ground or they get replaced. So we will go through if they're not too bad and just grind them, but if they're greater than that, then we fully replace them.
Okay.
thank you. All right, motion to adjourn, please. Jessica?
Second.
Second by Leroy. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.